Good morning to everyone, and welcome to our newest 5G in Americas webinar. This event aims to enrich the discussions about 5G and cybersecurity in Brazil. Today, our guest speaker is Vanessa Copetti, Regional Compliance Coordinator at the Brazilian National Telecommunications Agency, Anatel. Vanessa Copetti is a telecommunication regulation expert that has worked for Anatel since 2005. She has a legal background, JD, and LLM, and a PhD in International Strategic Studies of the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, with a research focus on cybersecurity. She is member of the Anatel Cybersecurity and Critical Infrastructure Risk Management Technical Group, and has been a Brazilian delegate to several International Telecommunication Union meetings and conferences, as well as to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development meetings and forums following cybersecurity-related issues. She has served twice as chair of the correspondence group created to improve the Global Cybersecurity Index questionnaire, and serves as co-reporter of the cybersecurity question of the study group 2 of the development sector of the ITU. A quick disclaimer. I would like to remind you that the opinions expressed in the following session are the responsibility of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the official position of 5G in Americas or any of its members. This webinar will be recorded and will be made available later on the 5G in Americas Scala YouTube channel. The link will be sent by email shortly. Lastly, the session will be moderated by José Otero, Vice President of 5G in Americas for Latin America and the Caribbean, who is going to give us a brief introduction to today's topic. Mr. Otero, please take the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Ludmila, and welcome, Vanessa, for sharing with us the position of Anatel in terms of cybersecurity. So everybody knows, after the presentation, we will have a Q&A session, so where you can ask directly to our presenter any question, any doubts that you may have. The issue of cybersecurity is extremely important when it comes to 5G, because as we already know, 5G is going to be that catalytic for the use of data-centric application. Why? Because through 5G and later on 6G, data transmission costs will decrease exponentially with 5G up to 80%, with 6G even more, thus making a plethora of new services available. At the same time, while 5G is going to allow us to connect 1 million devices per square kilometer, 6G is going to allow us to connect 10 million. What I'm getting here is we are going to have more point of contact that could be endangering the whole network. There are going to be more places where unauthorized access can get to us. And this is not even taking into consideration the ongoing and the historical traditional social engineering that actually create havoc and is responsible for most of the unauthorized access that we have. And of course, there's also the case of cyber politics and cyber wars and cyber attacks. So that's why if we are moving to 5G, if we are moving to 6G, we're moving to that digitalized world of smart territories of digital transformation. Cybersecurity is no longer something that is nice to have, but it's essential. It's something that we have to have. It's a requirement nowadays for any telecom network. With that said, I'm very happy to present to you Vanessa Copetti.
So thank you very much, José Otero. Thank you very much, Ludmila, and thank you, 5G in Americas, for this invitation. It's my pleasure to be here, and also it's a pleasure for Anatel to be able to share what we are doing in Brazil regarding cybersecurity and, of course, 5G, which is our discussion topic today. So I will share my screen. So I hope you can all see it. So please, if you're not, please let me know. So I guess you can all see it. And so let's start our conversation today. So when we are talking cybersecurity, and this is very clear to Brazil, and you can see this in our National Transformation Agency strategy, not only in the first version and of course in the second edition, and you can always see this in our National Cybersecurity Strategy. Cybersecurity is seen as a pillar, as an enabler to digital transformation. We cannot talk about digital transformation, which is something that we are all looking forward without talking about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is one of its main pillars. And when we are talking about digital transformation, we are talking about development, we're talking about the well-being of our population, and that is why it's so important, and that is why it's such a sensitive topic for all nations. And you can even see in the more recent cybersecurity strategies, they all embrace this idea that this is a key pillar for digital transformation, linked to the development, linked to this economical and social aspects of this phenomena. You can understand and talk about cybersecurity in several different ways, contemplating and embracing several different perspectives. For example, you can talk about cybersecurity when it relates to cybercrime. You can talk even about protection of personal data, because of course there are two topics that go along. You cannot talk about protection of personal data without protecting the data itself. So that's why they go along. You can talk about in some things that José Otero already mentioned. For example, you can talk about cyber attacks, cyber warfare. You can discuss this in several different aspects. And of course, the technical aspects are very important, as well with the standardizations components of it. So we have several dimensions to address and to understand cybersecurity. And of course, each one of the actors in this field have a role, a very important role to play. So moving forward, Anatel in its recent strategic plan for 2023 until 2027, so it's a 4-year cycle strategic vision. It has set two main strategic actions that relate to cybersecurity. The first one is Initiative 7, that addresses the promotion of our holistic risk management approach when it comes to the protection of critical infrastructure. And of course, when we are talking about protection of critical infrastructure, there is no doubt that the 5G infrastructure is a critical infrastructure. Then also we have a specific strategic goal, which is to connect this connectivity critical infrastructure. And as outcomes of these strategic visions, we see the enhancement of the protections of these infrastructures that involve several parts of the network itself, several components, several equipments, and also the enhancement of specific these protections of this infrastructure when we are talking about cyber threats. There is also another component of this strategic vision, that it's the strategic action 17. And this here we have a different perspective. In a perspective that link this discussion to meaningful connectivity, understanding that even though it's highly important to address the technical aspects and also all the procedures and processes related to cybersecurity, you can not only address this without also addressing the component that relates to people. And when we are addressing digital transformation, one important component is that people need to feel confident in using technology. They have to have trust on this technology, and they have to understand the risks of the use of this technology, and also they have to adopt a safety behavior this behavior, these cyber hygiene practices, they not only protect the individual, but they have a positive effect in the networks itself and the whole ecosystem. So that is why understanding this perspective and looking to the people, to the users, to our consumers, to the Brazilian citizens, Anatel has set as a strategic vision and special initiative to foster the prevention against fraud and scams in the digital ecosystem, understanding that basic concepts of cyber hygiene would not only protect people, but also would have a very important positive effect in the networks. So the strategic goal here is to promote awareness in digital security of the citizens and also other actors. And as Spectre's outcome, we are looking for the reduction of digital frauds in scams as a whole in the country, and also the increase of the confidence in the use of ICTs. So this slide is just to illustrate this change in approach, which is something that we have been mature in the last couple of years and has becoming more concrete in our strategic vision. And this illustrates that people to be able to benefit from all the opportunities that technology can have in their lives, in their communities, in their cities, in their society, in our society. They need to feel empowered. They need to have the necessary skills. They need to have the awareness to understand the risks that they face when they are using this technology. And of course, after understanding the risks, we need a change in the behavior. We need that people act more in a safe way using this technology. And also in this way, they're not only protect themselves, but they also, as we mentioned, we also have a positive impact in the ecosystem. Just to give an example, we know that distributed denial of service attacks are very common, and they are one of the most common attacks that telcos face and ICPs face. And for example, if I don't use a secure and a strong password in my own domestic network, my devices could be compromised, my data could be compromised, my data could be stolen, even my financial data. But not only that, my devices, my network could be used in an attack, in a denial of service attack of other network that could be even inside of Brazil or even outside of the Brazil. And also, unfortunately, we are seeing a world with a lot of conflicts, and also one weak networks with weak passwords can also be used in this conflict in a way or another. So this is something that we are trying to avoid. And when you protect the user, you protect the consumer, you protect the citizen, they understand what the risks are, they became uninformed user, and also their behavior will help the whole ecosystem. So the Anatel's role on cyber is to promote the security and the resilience of the networks in Brazil, of course, the telecom networks and service. And we do this daily, taking to consideration 3 actions. So first one, the first action, look to regulation. And we are going to see that Brazil, Anatel has a specific regulation for the telecommunication sector. In Brazil, we do have a national cybersecurity policy. In fact, we have a brand new national cybersecurity policy. We have a national cybersecurity strategy, and this strategy is under review, especially because we now have a higher public policy, which is the policy that was approved in the end of last year, in December 26th, to be more precise. And also we have some sectoral regulation, and the first sector, specific sector in Brazil to approve regulation was the financial sector. This regulation has already undergo through, I believe, 2 revision cycle. And the second sector was the telecommunication sector, and now we even have the energy sector with a specific regulation. But we don't live only with regulation. Another very important pillar of our initiatives, our action in cybersecurity, includes addressing equipment. So we do this in the pillar of conformity and certification, and we are going to see that Anatel has 2 specific acts on this regard that address certification and specific cybersecurity requirements. And the third pillar, which is not the last one here, but it's not the least important, is awareness. And then also looking to the people with this new approach, understanding how important the people are in these cybersecurity discussions. So diving in one in each one of this the pillars, we have the first one that addresses regulation. So our regulation has one component that addresses first the principles, the guidelines, and the obligations that a specific set of service providers have. And a second part of the regulation addresses how Anatel and the sector are going to do the governance of cybersecurity, which is quite interesting because if you have already time to look and to see the modifications of the NIS2, the revision of the cybersecurity framework was created by NIST, you're going to see that one of the they add one basic function, and this modification was to include the governance aspect on the basic function. So this something that relates quite closely to the importance of having a proper mechanism to do this governance. So when we are talking about principles, the regulation sets that all actors in the sector have to be guided by the authenticity, confidentiality, availability, diversity, integrity, interoperability, priority, responsibility, and transparency. Then we also have the guidelines that should act the behavior of all sectors. Again, here, when we are talking about principles and guidelines, we are talking to all the actors in the telecommunication sectors. The guideline says states the need to adopt standards and good practice, best practice, to development of a cybersecurity culture, to also to advocate for safety and sustainable use of the networks. Have a mention here to although it doesn't mention specific the NIST, it has its basic functions when it mentioned about to identify, protect, diagnose, detect, respond, and to recover from incidents. Also, another very important guideline, it's cooperation between different actors, which we all know that's quite important in cybersecurity. We cannot do cybersecurity in silos. Also another, it's the mention of the safeguard, the protection of human rights and fundamental guarantees. And finally, also the concept of security by design and privacy by design that should also guide the actors in this regard. When we talk about the obligations, Anatel has adopted an approach which is its approach that Anatel adopts not only for the cybersecurity regulation, but for several regulations. And this is an asymmetric approach, means that the mandatory provisions does not apply to all service providers. So the small service providers, they don't have to comply, although they have to observe in their practices, they have to observe the principles, they have to comply with the guidelines, they don't have to comply with the set of obligations, which are a set of ex-ante controls that were imposed specific to the big telco. So only the telcos that are not defined as small providers have to comply with this. And what are the obligations that these providers have to comply? Well, so first they have to do the proper governance of cybersecurity, which is mean they do have to develop and to maintain and to revise in a regular way a cybersecurity policy. This policy will have to be approved by the higher body in the enterprise, which means that is the body that is responsible for the strategic vision of the organization. It had to, for example, to nominate a director that's going to be responsible for the implementation of that policy. It's going to have to establish a proper to indicate which department is responsible for implementation. And also the regulation specifies a set of requirements that this policy will have to deal with. For example, it has to mention how they do the qualification and the training of its employees. It will have to address how they do awareness of not only of their employees, but also for their consumers, what controls were established for 7 dimensions of cybersecurity, including the protection of personal data, how they deal with the diversity of suppliers, and all this kind of things has to be specified in this policy. This policy, they will have to put a summary, something that, for example, can be that is not sensitive. Of course, this policy will also contain some sensitive information, for example, hierarchy of its critical infrastructure. So this is not information that we want to see published. So, but there are there are many useful information that is important for society to understand how this theme is addressed by the provider, and this has to be also be published on the provider's webpage on their site. Also, Anatel, when was deciding and discussing the regulation, one thing that became quite clear is that it's very important for the regulator to understand and have a diagnosis of what's happening and when it comes to the incidents in our networks, in the Brazilian networks. So that's why we established a mandatory notification system. And what we know that to define relevant incident for the ones that are very that that are familiar with the discussion, it's a quite complex theme, and we decided to establish a exemplificatory list of the mandatory incidents that have to be reported for Anatel. So any data breach, any indication of an APT, any, for example, any problem with BGP routing should be reported, and also any successful ransomware. And well, we have a list of the cases that have to be reported to Anatel, and also, of course, denial of service is one of them, because it's important and is also something that impacts quite hard the small service providers, and this is something that we are looking for to have a diagnosis. Not only there, we are striving to foment, to foster an ecosystem that the providers, they feel comfortable to share information between them without the look of the regulator. We know that it's very hard when the regulator are in the middle of this discussion. So besides the mandatory reporting, we do have a specific obligation to foster this information sharing ecosystem between them that Anatel is not participating. They use MISP in order to do this, and we know this is something that needs time to mature, to providers feel comfortable on cooperating and sharing information between them. We have a very good example in Brazil of the financial sector, and they have come a long way, and they are in a better position when it comes to information sharing. They have matured a lot, and we are also looking forward to get to the same stage of the financial sector in Brazil, a stage that the providers feel comfortable in sharing information, because we know that the incident that happens or the vulnerability that is covered today may be the vulnerability that's going to be explored in another provider the next day. So that's why it's so important to be able to foster this ecosystem. We also have a specific look to the suppliers. And what we have, and I think here we have also a very link to the discussions when it comes to 5G and cybersecurity. So supply chain, has become one of the emerge and the biggest concerns when it comes to cybersecurity. We have seen in the past several incidents and attacks exploring vulnerabilities in the supply chain. And what we have decided is to create an obligation, meaning that the telcos, they can only use in their networks and service equipments that are from suppliers that also have a proper cybersecurity governance and a cybersecurity policy that's aligned with our guidelines and with our principles. But not only that, these suppliers, they also they have to undergo through audit processes that is conducted by third parties. These results have to be submitted to the agency. And right now, we have been able to discuss in how this implementation of this specific article is going to move forward. And we are doing a public consultation on the requirements for these audit processes. This is the final stage. And hopefully in later this year, we are going to see the full implementation of this specific item, which was the last item that was pending any further details to be able to allow the implementation. Also, we know that when there is code, there are vulnerabilities. And So it's critical to address these vulnerabilities. So also one of the mandatory provisions relates to vulnerability assessment cycles also conducted by third parties. And these results also have to be submitted to the agency. And finally, the last provision addressed the report on critical infrastructure, which also have to be submitted to the agency. And as I mentioned, we have this set of principles, guidelines, and obligations as like the first component of the regulation, and the second component is the governance with the creation of the cybersecurity technical group. In fact, the name is a little bit bigger because the name is cybersecurity and critical infrastructure risk management technical group, but we also call by the nickname, which is GT-Ciber, which is much easier. So this group, it was born with a big set, a long list of tasks that should be accomplished. It has a very broad, very wide mandate, and I will highlight some of these specific attributions. Include to follow up the compliance of the cybersecurity policy by the telcos, the development of the definitions needed for the implementation of the regulation, which was a major that started right after the approval of the regulation. So we have, for example, established the definitions for the notification of the incidents, which means that we discussed and created a list of mandatory incidents that have to be reported. Even also, I mentioned the final process of the audits that's under public consultation. So all these discussions happen inside of GT-Ciber. Also, it's responsible for following up the information sharing procedure that also was established by one of the obligations of the regulation, outreach and engagement with bodies and entities. What I'm doing right now, engaging with you and 5G in Americas to discuss this topic. Internalization of best practice and standards, capacity building, awareness initiatives, and the development of studies. You can see that it's a very ambitious role for this group to continue. Before I jump into the certification acts, it's important to mention that the coordination of GT-Ciber is done by one of the superintendents that is nominated by the board of directors of Anatel, the board of commissioners, and this board of commissioners has nominated the head of the compliance department, which is Gustavo Santana, to head this group. This group has participation of several areas of the agency because, as you know, it is a cross-cutting issue, and even inside the agency, we have several different departments that addresses different perspectives of cybersecurity. For example, at the International Affairs, we have a lot of discussions about cybersecurity and the international fora. When we go to the department that deals with Spectrum and equipment, we have all the discussions about certifications. When we come to compliance departments, we have the discussions of the compliance of the regulation itself, and so on. When we go to the enforcement, the supervision department, we have all the activity to supervise and the inspections that can be done in the telcos to be able to address these issues. And also, in the plenary, we have Anatel and, of course, the telcos that have to comply with the regulation, plus was one seat that was given to a representation of small service providers, which we believe is quite important for this discussion. And also the regulation allows the group to create other structures. So within the structure of GT-Ciber, we have 4 subgroups. And these subgroups, technical subgroups, we have one specific to address the cybersecurity policy and critical infrastructure. Another one addresses information sharing and best practices. A third one addresses requirements, suppliers, and equipment. And the last one addresses the international discussions because Anatel has a role to represent Brazil in the international telecommunications organizations such as ITU, International Telecommunications Union, and the CITEL, which is the Inter-American Commission of Telecommunications. And in these organizations, cybersecurity has become one of the hot topics of discussions. So it's very important that we are able to follow the discussions, to actively engage, to prepare the positions that Brazil is going to take in this forum, and also to be able to share, as we mentioned before, we cannot work with cyber in silos, so it's not just a matter of Anatel or the public service, but we also have to listen to private sector. We have to also have the inputs from civil society, academia. So all these visions, and even outside our sectors, it's important to be able to actively engage in this conversation. So all these groups, they were created to implement the regulation and also to fulfill the mandate of GT-Ciber, which is quite ambitious. So if you recall, I mentioned that Anatel work in 3 ways. The first way, regulation. The second way is conformative and certification schemes. So here we are looking at equipment. And right after we first approve our regulation, we also approve our first act on this regard. This is not an isolated act. It also follows international best practices on this regard. For example, is much aligned and has considered the recommendation of OECD that addresses digital security of products and services, and as well the recommendation that addresses vulnerabilities. So the Act 77 that was approved in January 2021 establishes cybersecurity requirements for telecommunications equipment. It contains several recommendations to manufacturers and suppliers, and also establishes a market surveillance program, which means that Anatel can take in the market some products to conduct some analysis, vulnerability analysis, or for example, if Anatel does receive any complaint, it can assess that specific products. And this assessment also can result in any kind of a determination to the supplier to mitigate that vulnerability, to solve the issue, and if it's not, also can end up to block this equipment and not allowing to be in Brazilian market. I think it's important to highlight that this first act is a voluntary act, so it's self-declared by the suppliers. And what is interesting to see is right after we enacted this act, we started to discuss and the need to improve it, and also to move forward in order to have some mandatory requirements. And this discussion It's an example of how the GT-Ciber can work. This discussion was conducted in the technical subgroup that addresses requirements, equipments, and suppliers. And as this mature, we end up with Act 2436 that was approved last year. And this act also went through a publication consultation process, public consultation processes. And this discussion evolved from having specific mandatory requirements for the certifications purposes for a specific set of equipments, which are the CPEs, the consumer premises equipment, which means that the routers that the telcos will give you, allowing them to provide the services. So this is coming to force in the next days. It was enacted in the beginning of last year, and of course, it has been go through this this process for adaptation and for its implementation. Long conversations also with the entities that conduct this the conformity assessments for the purpose of certification. So this is something that's going to evolve, and we are going to see the enforcement of this in the upcoming months. So last but not least is the third pillar of our role and our initiatives and measures in cybersecurity, and this is focus on people. So one thing that became quite clear is that the need to enhance the awareness initiatives. So first of all, we have created a dedicated page in our website, and you can find at Anatel. You can find what is specific page in the hot topics that address cybersecurity. And this page will explain all the public policies that give the context for Anatel's action on cybersecurity, and we will also explain about the regulation, about all the Certifications Act. We will also explain about the GT-Ciber. You're going to find a picture that shows how we work, the subgroups. You can also find all the decisions that that were made by the group. You can find, for example, we have launched on the end of last year a basic guide for cybersecurity for the service providers. Is also available in the site. It's also available another guide specific for DevSecOps, which is also available, which means integrating in the operations, the security, the development and operations. So everything that we do on cyber, it goes to the site. So it creates awareness on our actions. We try to be as much as possible transparent in our actions. But of course, that's not the only way to raise awareness. So we have specific campaigns that involve not only the telecom sectors, but also involves different actors from different sectors. For example, we have Fixperto, which is something like in Portuguese would be in English translated would be something like Be Smart. And this is like a campaign that runs every 3 months. And for example, the telcos send SMS and emails to their base. And also we all the partners use social media to share some content related to cyber hygiene, which is not only important to telecom, but also involves several aspects, for example, of fraud, digital fraud that relates also to the financial sector. More recently, we have launched a page that focuses on digital frauds and cyber hygiene, because the way to prevent happening these frauds and scams in adopting basic cyber hygiene measures. So this page that addresses frauds and scams, it will have a specific dedicated page to address also the cyber hygiene, and also we have a page explaining the how the I would say the hot fraud schemes that are ongoing in Brazil. Unfortunately, there is a list, and we explain how they happen, the narrative that they use. Most of them involve social engineering. And if happened to you, what should you do? How do you first how to prevent, and then after happening, how to mitigate, and what are the actions that you need to do? And also in our YouTube Anatel's page, you're going to have a cybersecurity playlist, and here, for example, you're gonna find some specific videos, awareness videos that were created, for example, on phishing, on social engineering, on spoofing, etc. You're gonna find some many events that we are promoting on cybersecurity awareness. For example, we have done a very interesting one on the internet, Safe Internet Day, that will happen in February 6th. So moving forward, everything that I did was to give you a context of how we are addressing cyber, and everything applies to 5G. 5G, it has a specific considerations, and Jose in the beginning already mentioned several. The fact is that we are going to widen the surface attack, so we're going to have a bigger surface attack with many with more devices connected. And this is a reality, and of course it's going to be worse every day that goes by, with more devices connected, more people connected, and something that we have to address. So everything that I mentioned and the obligations, they remain valid for 5G, because Brazil has adopted a risk management approach. So it's important to mention that quite clear that there is no vendor restriction for public networks. So there is no vendor restriction in our 5G auctions. But there is a specific requirement for a private secured government network, which is being developed as an invest commitment that was created by the 5G auction. So there were several invest commitment in the 5G auction of Brazil. Some involve connecting specific parts of Brazil that, of course, were underserved. For example, we have a specific obligation regarding the Amazon, but also there was one specific commitment involved this private security government network that's going to work only for government. And for this specific network that's going to be built, there are specific security requirements. If, for example, the type of cryptography that's going to be allowed in this network, etc. Some of the requirements were established by the public policy enacted by the Ministry of Communication. And based on this decision of the Ministry of Communication, Anatel development the auction notifications. Another very important point that relates to the third part of our conversation is that the bidders formally committed to establish the measure to promote cybersecurity in its networks and service according to the cybersecurity regulations, which means that everything that we talk about before applies to the 5G bidders. So the discussions about the principles, the guidelines, etc. And of course, the telcos, the one that they are not small providers, they are already obligated to implement in its networks, not only because of the 5G, but because they don't fall into the category of small service providers. Therefore, they already had to comply with this for their 4G and 3G, their whole network. So another interesting thing is to mention that even before 5G started to be deployed in Brazil, even before we have the 5G auction, but when we started the discussions prior to the auction, we also we came to the conclusion that was quite important to understand more about 5G. And in this sense, because the technology has, at that point, in the beginning of 2021, has not been deployed yet in Brazil. So the deployment started 2022 in the capitals of the states of Brazil, and was quite clear that we needed to understand more of these disruptions that the technology bring. And with this understanding, then of course we could better regulate based on evidence, on facts, and based on studies regarding the 5G. So what we have done as Anatel is that we did a research cooperation agreement with a federal university in Brazil, a university that had experience in implementing several projects related to technology, related to telecom, and even specifically related to 5G. So was a lab that has it's recognized by its knowledge, and so we have this cooperation agreement had the object as to do research in an innovation project specific on cybersecurity of 5G cybersecurity and 5G technology, but also, of course, not forgetting about the legacy networks, because you know that although 5G has been deployed, they're going to coexist for several years with 4G, 3, and hopefully not much, but also with 3G. And when the deployment and the times go by, we're going to see a difference, but it's going to be many years until we have like a progressive move towards the coverage of 5G. So this was a very comprehensive study. It was celebrated in December 2021. It was decentralized more than 3 million reais to this university to conduct this study, to the Federal University of Campina Grande, which is in the northeast of the country. And this we could say that this research project contemplated 3 main dimensions. One was the basic perspective to identify the characteristics, the main ones, and the dimensions of the security of the telecommunications networks on 5G. Then we have the technological perspective, which addresses each one of the technologies that made the uniqueness of 5G, and characterizes this disruption. For example, understanding cloud in 5G, IoT in 5G, the software-defined networks, also the slicing, all this technology that they are component and 5G. They were studying with this lens of cyber. And also, finally, we had one dimension that includes the discussions of the economic, standardization, and regulatory perspective. So this it was finished in the end of the last year. We are in the final rounds of approval of this document. We also have one thing that I think it's very important. Not only we have conducted several workshops to disseminate this knowledge to Anatel, so to the civil servants that work in Anatel and that will address this topic, but also we have working with the telcos that already have been deploying or will deploy 5G to be so they get to know, of course, the material, they can understand, and then of course they can adopt the measures that they are applicable to their own networks. This is very comprehensive study, so they are the 3 dimensions. They became like 8 areas of studies. Each area produces 2 reports. One that have, for example, an analysis of the situation, analysis of the topic, a technical analysis, and then we have another material that focus on the best practices for mitigating the risk, the vulnerability specific of one of the topics, for example, slicing. And we are talking about many pages, and hopefully this project also has a very positive impact for academia. So they have produced and published several papers based on also the studies. And we also look forward to continue to finalize finalize and to study and to see if we need to adopt any additional measures now with the inputs and the facts that have been brought by this academia input. So with this, I conclude my presentation, and I hope you have enjoyed this very wide overview of what we are doing. Here is the contact of GT-Ciber, and I'm available to any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vanessa, for that comprehensive presentation in terms of what is being done from a regulatory front in terms of cyber regulation in Brazil. Surely is a very good benchmark to other governments in Latin America and the Caribbean. Unfortunately, many of them still don't have a cybersecurity program to tackle the potential threats that could be present in the region. I have already been present in the region in many countries in the recent past. Now I'm going to allow for questions. You could do it in 2 ways. You could put it in the chat, or you could raise your hand, and I'll allow you to have audio so you can ask Vanessa directly. Let's see. Rene, that's a long question, so I'm going to allow you to have the microphone.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Vanessa, for the wonderful presentation. While you were going through it, I was wondering, do you have any thoughts about the cybersecurity matters being a charge of the telecom regulator as opposed to a specialized regulator agency? We do account that cybersecurity matters do affect across several institutions, organizations like central banks, financial institutions, national security agencies, et cetera, et cetera. So do you think that, I mean, of course, you work for Anatel, but do you think it would be more effective to have a specific regulator or a body taking care of all of this and be able to span across several ministries, for instance? That's probably an open question, but what are your thoughts about that?
That's okay. Now I'm mute. So Renee, your question could not be more timely. I think it's important also to share. So this is an ongoing discussion in Brazil. So last year, we have this public discussion, so you can find also in Anatel actively participate on this. So there is has been a draft of the creation of a specific and dedicated cybersecurity agency in Brazil, which will coordinate this matter nationally, but it will also preserve the mandate of the sector regulations. So right now, this draft bill is in the civil cabinet of the presidency of the Republic. So it's an ongoing, it's not finalized. And after they finalize, it will be sent by the Congress to have this this national discussion of this topic. I can share as Anatel, this is something, although we don't have a specific formal position yet of an agency, we believe it's quite important to have one national coordinator. Or this will improve the coordination. The coordination is not only needed in this public sector, but also we need a coordination with the whole country, because we are also a federation. So we have states, we have the union, we have the states, and we have like thousands of municipalities. So when we mentioned we cannot work in silos, so even if we are discussing, for example, cybersecurity in the federal government, we also have to have this discussion and how to protect the states and how to protect also the municipalities that provide public service to our citizens. So this is a very important discussion. We need to get all on board. And even if we discuss, well, for the federal government, we do have some kind of coordination, and we do, which is conducted by the institutional security cabinet. For example, this is only for the executive branch. We also have to have the legislative branch. We also have to have the judiciary branch. The judiciary branch has a specific cybersecurity strategy, but we need to work, this is quite complex, and this fragmented activity or initiatives, although we have like very good examples and very good initiatives, we need to have coordination. So we believe this is a very timely discussion, and this is an ongoing discussion in Brazil. And also the national policy that created in the last year, the National Cybersecurity Committee. This committee will also have the discussions about this. And Anatel is one of the public entities that is part and that has received a specific and dedicated seat. Actually, in fact, is the only regulatory agency that has received a seat on this committee. This committee is formed by 25 members. 15 are from public sectors, mainly the ministries and Anatel. We also have a seat to the Brazilian Internet Steering Committee. And we have 9 sectors for the society as a whole, 3 for example, private sector that has any relation with cyber, 3 for academia, and 3 for civil society. And this is, so as I mentioned, this is this discussion is an open discussion, and it's something that is happening right now in Brazil.
Thank you, Vanessa. I just want to complement what Vanessa said there. In other jurisdictions that do have a Ministry of Digital Transformation, for example, let's talk about Trinidad and Tobago, Ukraine, Spain. This digital transformation is also another topic that goes across all industry. Cybersecurity falls under the duty of that ministry. So they, as part of the digital transformation responsibilities and duties, they also are in charge of the implementation and overseeing of any type of cybersecurity effort from the government. So there's another model that is outside there, but as we already know, most countries do not have as digital transformation ministry as of yet. Any other questions that we might have for Vanessa? They're a little bit shy, so I do have a question. You were talking about the regulatory framework, what is happening nowadays in terms of 5G, the increment and the necessity of having a cybersecurity policy. Let's go a little bit to the future, maybe a couple of days. So how are you how is the Anatel, how's the other government agencies in Brazil looking towards the increasing use by non-authorized user of in their attempt to hack Brazilian network with AI quantum computing? Because we already know that 6G is going to be incorporating AI. There's a lot of debate in terms of how can we get a quantum computer into those 6G services, even in 5G advanced that release 18, 19, to ensure that we are better protected against all these attacks. Hold on. Yes. This then is I need to where are you for gallery? Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a great question. So first of all, I thought I would answer in two ways. So I think the first way is participating in engaging, and I think this is quite important for countries in Latin America, participating in standardizations fora. So we have several, allow you to understand and to internalize best practices and standards that will help to face this issue. So for example, although quantum is still in the future, we have started work on standardizations, and you're going to find some initiatives on this matter, even inside ITU, if you go to study group 17, for example. So if you follow these discussions, you have the pattern, the standards, you have technical reports, you have information that you can start to internalize in your own country, not only like with policymakers, not only the regulatory agency, but also working with the telco, with the operators, because in the end, they are the ones responsible to manage the risks. We can create regulation, but we don't operate the network. The network is operated by the operators. And so we have to make sure that we enable this environment, and the standardizations is one important component. The second thing is also, I think it's important to share that we are also looking to this future. And we are also doing, right now, we are revising our regulation. And as input for this process of revising our regulation, one of the commissioners of Anatel's board has a specific requested studies on AI, the impact of the AI to the teleco, the netco, generative AI. Also, we have requested specific studies on submarine cables, and also specific studies on data centers and cloud computing, because all these things, they go together, they are critical infrastructure. And with these inputs, they're going to be used in this revision process. So we have a new item in our regulatory agenda, which it means that's the way that we are transparent to society, and we say what we are going to do in the next few years. And this item has become for study this year. And these studies are ongoing in several technical departments of the agency. And we have one very specific on AI that you mentioned. We believe that this will be an important input to see if any additional measures need to be taken by Anatel, which could be, for example, a technical measure, measures, additional obligations, additional governance mechanism. We don't know, but these studies are going to be based on this input, and also, of course, we are looking forward to have this public discussions with the society, including, of course, the sector that we regulate, but not only, because this is span across a lot of sectors, and with this information to be able to see how to better address this emergent topics.
Yes, we have two questions that are very related to each other. The first one from Edith Machado Neto is about the transition of Act 77 and Act 2436, how testing and certification of products is being carried out with laboratories and companies. And then we have Lucas Sokol asking, how will Anatel ensure that product suppliers will employ security requirements? Hold on. Yeah.
So okay. So both questions, they relate. So first of all, this Act 77 was a self-declaration based certification schemes. So the companies that wishes, they declare that they comply with the regulation. And now what we have said, it's a different scheme that for specific products, these products, when they are they go through the conformative assessment, they will also have this set of security requirements taken into consideration. This will be done by laboratories, labs, and these labs, they have to found an accreditation process in Anatel that they become accredited, and they could conduct this assessment. Right now, there is another consultation going on, public consultation that sets the specific requirements for this lab to conduct this specific assessments. This is the final stage also of this adaptation processes for the labs for implementation of Act 2436. And regarding the product suppliers who employ the security requirements, well, you can understand this question as also a question regarding the equipment that will go through the mandatory requirement processes if it falls under the category of products that will need to get these certifications. So then they will be certified as by the labs. They will have this process done by the labs, as all certifications scheme for equipment in Brazil are. But also you can look this through the suppliers when we go to the regulation that talks about the suppliers of the big telcos. They have to have a cybersecurity policy, and they have to go through audit processes. So here we are going to have third parties that will assess this policy in the requirements that are set for these specific suppliers.
Okay, we are getting to the end of the webinar. Any other questions that you may have? Well, I do have a questions. Brazil is a big country. It had 26 states and the federal district, but we all know that under the law, all states are equal. In reality, we see that the states don't have the same resources. They don't have the same technology adoption, because Acre, Rio Branco, Amapan they are not the same that Santa Catarina, Rio Grande do Sul, Sao Paulo. How is Anatel coordinating with the state government to ensure that state agencies are up to date in terms of the adoption of cybersecurity measures?
Thank you. So I think it's another great question, and also deals with cybersecurity governance. So in Brazil, not yet, there is no cybersecurity national authority. We do have the Institutional Security Cabinet that is responsible for the federal government, agencies and entities. And we are trying to establish a national authority. And it would be like the primary role for this authority, which is not, which didn't define yet, could be a ministry, could be an agency, could be a body in the ministry. Well, that could be several models, and we have seen several models in the world. So there is no one size fits all solution. But this would be their primary role, to do the coordination, including the coordination with all entities of the federation. When it comes to telecom, the states doesn't have a mandate. So this is a primary mandate of the federal, of the union. So we don't have, of course, although we do have relation in the states, and even we do have a physical presence in all the states of Brazil. There is no need to coordinate regarding this specific telecom. It's always federal, is over and supervised by Anatel. But I think in your questions is it brings and becomes to this point again, which is we need coordination. The coordination, collaboration is one of the key aspects, and we are when we are talking about cybersecurity, and this is something that we are much looking forward. And I believe this discussion will advance and will mature in Brazil in the upcoming months, especially with with the start and the work of the National Cybersecurity Committee, which has been recently established, and the members have been recently nominated. They were nominated in the beginning of the last month, and the work is going to start in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, thank you. We have the last question by Luis Santos. In the chat, it says, regarding market surveillance, which is provided for in cybersecurity regulations, when and how are this surveillance expected to begin? As far as I know, there is currently no market supervision program implemented by the agency that can define rules and that can be used as a guide for the operation of this program. I mean, currently, for certified equipment that is tested locally, like EMC, safety, RF, SRA, there's no surveillance program, and this could be a difficulty for implementation in cybersecurity.
So all these the other aspects of EMC, safety, SAR, they are already mandatory requirements that have to be considered when we are doing the traditional conformity schemes. That is certifications, and this equipment, they go to the labs for the assessment, and also they go, the assessment goes, these labs have to be accredited by Anatel. What is done is we have like mainly half of Anatel works in the enforcement, and even our regional representation in every state of the country they are designed to do the inspections that also include equipments. For example, they will make sure that all equipments in the market, they are certified, which means that they have undergo through this procedure, and they have received an assessment on this item that they are able to sell in the Brazilian market. This is the traditional the way. What we are building now is a different system specific to address vulnerability in softwares, which is it is complex. And many of this, it is based on international best practices, and we are working very hard. It's not my department, to be frank. So there is one specific department in Anatel, is the department is the superintendence that deals with the spectrum, and we have a specific department that address certifications. And they are working closely with the industry and with the labs, so that we are able to guarantee that we have the labs have the expertise to conduct this analysis. But not only on this, we are also inside Anatel, we are looking forward to the creation of also cybersecurity lab that also will first of all develop the expertise of our own civil servants, especially the ones that work with supervision and enforcement, and conduct these inspections, also to be able to conduct these vulnerability assessments.
Well, this concludes the webinar for today, Ludmila. Of course, we are going to invite before the end of the year Vanessa to come back again and let us know how many of these new implementations. Some of them, one of them was in the presentation, started this month, to see what has been their impact and if there has been any new development over the year. Ludmila?
Vanessa, thank you so much. And I'd like to kindly ask you, everybody, to turn on your camera for a quick picture, please.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.